way. This bus will terminate at this stop. Thank you for travelling with First South. Enjoy your day.
Hello everybody and welcome to Taunton. Now today I'm going to be sampling 2 of the 7 currently, however I do believe there are supposed to be 9 in total, Wright GB Kite Electroliner buses entering service with First Bus Somerset, mainly for their 28 bus service. Now unfortunately on my way down to Minehead, ironically, I got a Wright streetlight because on the day I decided to film this video, there were only 2 or 3 GB Kites out. Anyway, today I'm also going to compare them to some of the Yutong buses, and just a little heads up, but even before we start this video, I personally prefer the Wright buses. I think they're a lot better. The ride quality is roughly the same, which isn't great, but they're a whole lot quieter, more smoother, and more comfier, and the announcements work a little bit better too. Anyway, here I am leaving Taunton Castle Way on the 28 service, heading all the way to Minehead on one of the older Wright streetlight vehicles. When the Enviro 300s that used to be used on this route started breaking down and they started being phased off of the First Bus Somerset network, more of these Wright streetlights were phased in from the south coast, such as Weymouth and Portsmouth, to help out on the 28 and other local bus services. As a result, a lot of commuters have to suffer with these awful buses. Here I am arriving at Watchit WSR station. This is the main stop in Watchit and acts as the local bus station in the area. Here, the 28 service is the main bus service, however you can also change for smaller bus services mainly on weekdays only, such as the 15 college service to and from Bridgewater, the free shuttle bus between Bridgewater and Minehead, which I have covered in a previous video, as well as the Hatch Green Coaches 23B if it serves here. That route is a little bit of an odd one. Going the other way, here is one of the new Wright GB Kite Electroliners. Here I am at Dunster Steep. As you can see, here is the last Enviro 300 in service with First Bus Somerset, and as you can see, one of the windows has been put in the wrong way around, which is absolutely hilarious. I believe there used to be around 10, maybe a bit less of them, in service with First Bus Somerset, originally transferred from Glasgow and were painted into the original Buses of Somerset 2014 livery. However, they then got repainted into the Quantock line livery, which is what that Enviro 300 is currently wearing. I believe 1 or 2 of them also got painted into the Buses of Somerset 21 livery, and 1 or 2 of them got transferred for a brief time up to Leicester. Here I am arriving at Minehead WSR station. Once again, this acts as the local bus hub in Minehead, along with a few other stops located along the main street, as well as the bus stop on Bank Street. Here I am now at the seafront, right next to the West Somerset railway station in Minehead. Now I believe the first of my Wright GB Kite Electroliners was 69398. I may have gotten that wrong, I will check again. However, here it is arriving into Minehead. It did originate just like that Wright streetlight ended at Minehead Butlins. I just couldn't really be bothered to go there. Here you can see the interior. I only got a brief video of it. However, the seats are incredibly comfortable, have the same maquette as some of the diesel Wright streetlights, which have been refurbished, as well as the Yutongs. They also have USB ports and the older style plastic rims, I suppose you'd call them, I'm not really too sure, around the windows. You can see similar versions of this just in the older First Olympia colours on some of the Wright streetlights, as well as on other older diesel vehicles, as well as Wright street decks that used to be in service with First West of England. Now there might be a video coming up on them soon, I'm unsure, probably not, because I believe a large proportion of them have been sent to Repower or New Power, whatever they call themselves, to get converted to electric, which is absolutely fantastic.
This is the 28 towards Castle Ring. Please remain seated until...
Now, one thing that I like, that even the Yutong E12s, that is the longer version of the Yutong single-decker buses, do not have, and that is the double seats towards the rear, but not actually at the rear. The older Wright Solars that operate in Swindon with Go-Ahead, and the older Wright Solars, that is the Scania L94UB versions, that used to operate on the 21 service, alongside a few of the Enviro 300s, also used to have a similar configuration. As well as this, I fancy the interior on the Wright GB Kite Electroliners has more of a purple feel, whereas the Yutongs is just dead up grey, which I think is awful. I prefer the purple interiors. It adds more colour, and the colours of First Bus and First in general are purple.
Bus shelter.
Here I am leaving the edge of Minehead near Alcombe. Here you can see how much quicker the Wright GB kites are compared to some of the awful Wright streetlights that operate along the 28th route. The Enviro 300 is also quite quick, but is starting to sound quite tired, so it's quite nice to have these new Wright GB Kite Electroliners entering service.
This is the 28 towards Castle Way. If you are standing, please hold on tight as we pull away.
No, I didn't manage to get a video of the seats on this bus. However, I did manage to get a video of the seats on the other bus. We'll be sampling a little bit later on. However, the double seats on this bus were absolutely fantastic, and even if some people actually seated opposite you, I still think you'd be able to sit there quite comfortably, which you cannot do on some of the Enviro 400s which we have that do have rear and forward facing seats right at the back of the bus on the lower deck. As well as this, all of the Wright GB kites have announcements programmed, I believe, unlike some of the Yutongs where the announcements kind of work. However, on these ones, I believe all of the destination screens work, which is not true on the Yutongs, where some of them have not been programmed properly. As well as this, these also have USB ports throughout the bus, as well as some absolutely brilliant bell configurations. I know it sounds boring, but if there's a bell near you, then that's a pretty good thing. Whereas on some of the Yutongs, the gaps between the bells and your seat can be ginormous.
The next stop is Watchit Railway Station.
That's why we're going home.
These are a bit bigger.
Yeah.
They all load up.
Here I am now back at Watchit. My 4-minute connection here ended up being a 0-minute connection, but I did actually manage to make it, which was absolutely spot on. Now in some of the clips on some of these Wright GB Kite Electroliners, you will notice that the hello signage and branding below the driver's cab door actually has some decoration on it, whereas on the Yutong U11DDs and the Yutong E10s that we have here in Somerset, it just has a plain purple and grey pattern. Whereas on here, it does have a purple pattern alongside the grey colours and the hello signage, which I think is quite nice. Anyway, one thing that I will say is although I do like the announcements on here, they are quite quiet, so if you can't hear what they're saying, it is probably worth looking up at the destination screens if you can. Now sometimes the announcements glitch or you can't hear them very well, because on all Wright bus vehicles, or at least all of the newer Wright bus vehicles, like the GB Kites or the Street Decks, the announcements are quite quiet. Here I am leaving the main bus stop in Alcombe, which is a suburb of Minehead. This mainly gets served by the 28 service, but I also believe that the Riddler's 11 town service also serves here, and that service is complete utter junk. Yeah, it runs pretty reliably, but it has a minibus, so it isn't very good. Anyway, one thing I also quite like about these Wright GB Kite Electroliners is that they are extremely quiet. With the U-Tongs, the electric motors have a different noise. It's very, very hard to explain, especially if you haven't actually been on the U-Tong U11DDs or the E10s. However, they have kind of a ding-ding noise as they go along, especially as they start to slow down or pick up speed. So that's one thing I quite like about the GB Kites, is that they do not have that. Instead, it is purely just quietness. Here you can see the destination boards on these new Wright GB Kite Electroliners. They're very, very similar to the ones on the U-Tong U11DDs, but something I will say that the U-Tongs have that the Wright buses don't have, which I don't think is very good, is that on the U-Tongs, the bus stopping sign that comes up and covers completely the whole, yeah, like that then, that covers the whole of the destination board, doesn't actually sync in with the bell on the Wright GB Kite, whereas on the U-Tong U11DD, that comes up when you press the bell, which I think is quite good. But the Wright GB Kites do actually have a proper ding to them, so I quite like that as well. Anyway, this is now coming to the end of this kind of short video. Now, there is going to be a long video. It may have already come out. It's about 2 or 3 hours long. So yeah, this kind of makes up for the longness. This video is quite short. There you can see the pattern. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. And personally, I think these buses will be an absolute success. They're as long and have the capacity as the Enviro 300s. They're as good as the Enviro 300s, apart from the sounds, of course. That's because it's an electric bus. And it has more luggage space than the Enviro 300s. Just about, I think. Definitely more than the Wright streetlights. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and sorry if the editing has been a little bit bad on this video. I'm starting to get worse at what I love doing. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye everyone!